I should have known it wasn't yoga. It was foreplay with better lighting. She was in leggings, barefoot, laughing on a FaceTime call, lying back on a pillow we never used. His voice came through the speaker, low and slow. You're getting more open every time. She smiled like I wasn't even real. That's when it all cracked. Let me back up. It started 6 months earlier, when she came back from some weekend yoga retreat in Sedona with this whole new vocabulary. She didn't say hello when she walked through the door. She said, "I feel so aligned." And then she looked at me and said, "You don't try yoga. You become yoga." I should have known right then, but I didn't. Her name's Melissa. We've been married 14 years. I work in IT, network infrastructure mostly. She was in HR, but burned out. Got into mindfulness, slow living, all that. At first, I supported it. I figured everyone needs something. Then she signed us up for couples yoga every Wednesday night. Now, I'm not exactly the poster boy for flexibility. I've got 2 herniated discs, a stiff left ankle, and the attention span of a beagle. But I showed up. I tried. Hell, I even bought the cork mat she said had better grounding energy. And that's where I met him. Blake. Blake was the instructor. Blake had the ponytail. Blake had the whispers. Blake had the feel into your heart center voice. Blake was a 6'2" walking affirmation with a tan and a collection of spiritual tattoos that all conveniently pointed toward his groin. At first, it was harmless. She liked the classes. I played along. Until one night, she said she wanted to start doing private sessions. Just one-on-one, she said. You snore during savasana, babe. I laughed, made a joke about enlightenment, and she smiled. But something in that smile felt distant. A few weeks later, she started going 3-4 times a week, sometimes twice in one day. She said it was helping with her anxiety, her trauma loops. I didn't question it. I trusted her. Until one night, I showed up to class, same Wednesday, 7:30, and she wasn't there. Blake greeted me at the door. His eyes flicked sideways. "Oh, she canceled," he said, like he'd just remembered. Said she wasn't feeling up to it. I texted her. No response. Called, went to voicemail. I drove home. Her car was in the driveway. One light was on, in the guest room. I walked in. She was lying on the floor in leggings, holding her phone above her head, laughing. Her cheeks were flushed. She looked up, startled. "Oh," she said. "You're back already?" "Already? Class ended 15 minutes ago." I didn't ask who was on the call. Didn't need to. She fumbled to lock the screen and sat up. "Didn't feel great," she said. "Migraine." I nodded. "Hope you feel better." That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I logged into our shared calendar, something we both used to organize the week. She'd added new events. Yoga, personal practice. Blocked for 2 hours. Every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 3 days in a row. Every week. The next morning, she posted a photo on Instagram. Her in Warrior 2, sunlight behind her, eyes closed, arms out. Caption: "Becoming who I've always been. No longer shrinking." Blake was in the background, just barely visible. She didn't tag him. She didn't tag me. I stopped going to class after that. She didn't ask why. She drifted further. There were crystals on every windowsill. Books with titles like Energetic Sovereignty and The Sacred Masculine. She'd play long, echoey chants in the kitchen while blending turmeric into almond milk. One night I came home, and she was sitting in the guest room. Again, headphones on, swaying. I stood in the hallway and watched her through the cracked door. Her face was soft, peaceful, blissed out. It wasn't for me. None of it was. I think I knew that by then. Still, I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse. I just watched, collected, listened. And then came the conversation. Sunday morning. She made me tea. Sat me down like she was delivering news from a doctor. "I think we've outgrown each other," she said gently. I asked, "Is there someone else?" She paused, just for one breath, then smiled, almost apologetic. "I didn't plan for it, but it feels right. He sees me." That stung. Not just the words, but how easy they came. Like she'd rehearsed them with him. Maybe she had. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just nodded. She offered to keep things amicable. Said she was going to a 2-week retreat soon, and afterward, we could consciously uncouple. Said I could keep the house, for now, until she figured out what this next phase looks like. I signed the papers 2 weeks later. No lawyers. No drama. I let her go, and she left smiling. Free. She thought I was broken. A man too stiff to bend, too shallow to heal. She told her friends I was holding on to a lower vibration. I heard that from someone who still liked me enough to say so. But I wasn't holding on. I was observing. I didn't post cryptic quotes. I didn't disappear. I went to work. I came home. I mowed the lawn. But before she packed her things for the retreat, her oils, her chakra beads, her favorite yoga blocks, I asked her one thing. Can I keep the guest room the way it is? She looked confused. Sure, she said. If that helps you process. It did. But not the way she thought. The night after she left for her second retreat, I walked into the guest room and stood in the middle of the floor for a while. It still smelled like eucalyptus. Her mat was rolled up in the corner, untouched. The incense shelf hadn't moved. I didn't change anything. Just stood there, looking at the Bluetooth speaker she always used for her private sessions. I picked it up, flipped it over, checked the battery, and placed it back exactly where it was. I wasn't ready to touch more than that yet. At first, the house felt dead quiet, like someone had hit pause on everything. I didn't mind. No music playing from another room. No blender screaming through morning smoothies. No quotes about alignment or expansion echoing through the kitchen. She left a post-it on the fridge. Remember to be present. I threw it away without reading it twice. For a while, I just stayed busy. Work, groceries, dishes. I started sleeping in again. I ate in silence. People who knew us asked where she was. I said she was on a spiritual reset. Most nodded politely. A few smirked like they already knew. No one pushed. I think people could tell I wasn't in the mood for sympathy. A week in, she sent a picture from the mountains, her on a deck in tree pose, smiling toward the camera. Blake stood just behind her, half out of frame, his hand barely visible at the small of her back. The caption read, "When you find the person who holds space for all of you, you expand." I stared at it longer than I meant to. I didn't comment, didn't save it, but I remembered the way she used to say she wasn't ready to be seen. Now here she was, stretching herself open to the world like she'd just been waiting for someone new to clap for her. That night, I walked past the guest room and noticed the Wi-Fi router's light blinking. It was still connected. I went in, turned on the Bluetooth speaker, and played a song through it from my phone. Just testing range. Nothing suspicious. Then I unplugged it and left the door closed. The next morning, I ordered a small USB webcam and had it shipped to my office. I told myself it was for a project, something technical, maybe remote access support. I even looked up software to justify it. But I knew why I wanted it. I just didn't know yet how it would fit. Melissa texted a few days later. Said the energy at the retreat was transformative and she might stay longer. I told her to take all the time she needed. She thanked me for being so supportive through all this. Said she'd been telling people I was doing the work too. Apparently that made her look more enlightened. I replied, "I'm just focusing on clarity." She said that made her smile. Things stayed quiet for a while. But then I got a text from Mike, a guy I worked with a few years back who still followed Melissa online. He wrote, "Yo man, not trying to be a jerk, but, damn, your ex is wilding out." She really posted that? I didn't know what he meant. I checked her page. There was a new video. Blake and Melissa, both in linen, walking barefoot through some field, holding hands, talking about the courage to step out of systems that no longer serve. In the next clip, they were sitting cross-legged on a mat, gazing into each other's eyes while some woman off-camera narrated. Melissa was stuck in survival for so long, but now she's in sacred trust. She's finally safe. Then Blake said, "You don't have to apologize for your needs anymore. I see all of you." She laughed. That light, airy laugh she used to fake at dinner parties. I paused the video, looked closer. Blake was wearing a hoodie I hadn't seen in years, mine. My old gray Columbia zip-up. She used to steal it from the laundry pile when she was cold. I recognized the tiny bleach stain on the cuff. I stared at the screen and felt this strange sense of distance, like I was watching someone else's life get erased in real time. Later that week, a small padded envelope showed up at the house. Addressed to Melissa, return address from Colorado. I opened it. Inside was a crystal necklace, some handwritten note with the word sanctuary underlined 3 times, and a small sticker that said retreat leaders only. I took a photo, resealed the package, and left it on the counter. When she called the next day, she was glowing through the phone. She said she was coming back just for a few days to grab the rest of her things and finalize paperwork. She asked if she could stay in the guest room for 2 nights before flying out again. I said of course. She paused, then asked, "You didn't mess with the room, right?" I told her it was exactly how she left it. I even said, "I know it's a special space for you." She said, "Thank you. Seriously, that means a lot." Then she dropped it like it was nothing. "We're actually planning our own retreat. Blake and me. Small group, advanced practice, really intimate. He's doing the tech setup, I'm leading the flow. It's going to be streamed to a private group. Kind of an online immersion." I said, "Sounds important." She said, "It is. Feels like the start of something real." I didn't say what I was thinking. That the real start was the moment she unrolled a mat for him and rolled me out of the frame. After the call, I opened the closet and pulled down a black box I'd tucked away. Inside was the webcam. I ran a test in the guest room, adjusted the angle, just for a few minutes, just to check lighting. Then I unplugged it and left everything exactly where it had been. I started keeping a checklist, basic things. Sound check, router bandwidth, frame capture. Nothing complicated, just a few pieces that needed to fit. Melissa thought I was moving on, that I was taking walks and breathing deeper and finding my own path. What I was really doing was waiting. Not for her to come back, for her to perform. She arrived back from her retreat like she had just floated in on a breeze, barefoot, sun-kissed, and humming. She rolled her suitcase through the door, glanced around the house like it was a rental she vaguely remembered, and told me, smiling, "It's good to be grounded again." I helped with her bag, not because I wanted to, but because it felt like something she'd expect from the new, supportive version of me she'd imagined. She made some comment about the energy in the guest room still feeling held, and I told her I hadn't touched a thing. That part was true. Later that evening, she brought it up casually while pouring hot water over some herbal mix. "Tomorrow morning, around 10, we're doing the live stream. First one. Small, just the founding members. Advanced work. I'll need the space clear, obviously." I said I'd make myself scarce. She nodded like she appreciated it, like I was still playing along in her little theater. Then she asked if I'd mind testing the Bluetooth speaker again before bed, just to be sure the sound came through evenly. "Blake says the energy of the voice matters just as much as the words." I nodded and told her I'd handle it. She smiled like I was finally becoming the man she wanted me to be. The next morning, I left the house 15 minutes before her session was scheduled to start. I drove across town and parked behind an old hardware store with a clear signal. Opened my laptop, checked the stream. She was in the guest room, seated on her mat, eyes closed, shoulders relaxed. Blake entered from off-camera, placed a hand on her shoulder, then sat beside her, speaking low and slow, just like he always did. He welcomed the audience, a handful of unseen participants tuned in from who knows where. "This space is sacred," he said. "This moment is sovereign. What we say here stays here." They moved through the script like it was rehearsed. Melissa shared how far she'd come. "I used to silence myself for others," she said, "but now I speak from alignment." Blake leaned toward her just enough to suggest intimacy, without full commitment. "You've always been brave enough to step away from things that no longer served you, even if they thought you'd come back." She laughed, a light, breathy sound she only ever made when she wanted someone to notice her joy. To anyone watching, it probably sounded like nothing. To me, it was confirmation. I didn't watch the whole thing. Just enough. Enough to know what pieces had been put on the board and which ones they didn't even realize were in play. I closed the laptop and drove home. Parked a few blocks away, waited 30 minutes, then strolled in like I'd been at the coffee shop reading. She was in the kitchen, wiping down the counter again, humming under her breath. "It went great," she said without prompting. Really strong presence in the chat. A lot of resonance. I told her I was happy for her. She nodded and told me, very gently, "You know, you really should try being seen sometime. You've got presence too, you just never use it." That night, she went out with a couple of her new yoga friends, retreat people she'd met online, and was meeting up with locally to ground the digital into the physical. I stayed behind and used the quiet to process the feed. Cleaned it, archived it, renamed the files. She hadn't asked what I'd been working on lately. She assumed I was just figuring myself out, letting go, clearing old blocks. The next day, I heard her answer a call while she was in the middle of getting ready, applying eyeliner, standing in front of the mirror in the hall bathroom. The ringtone buzzed, and her voice lifted in surprise. "Wait, what? Who saw it?" There was a pause, followed by a series of rapid steps back to the guest room, door closing harder than usual. I stayed in the living room, watching her reflection blur in the dark TV screen. When she came out again, her eyeliner was only half done, and her phone was still in her hand. She was scrolling with both thumbs, breathing through her nose like she was trying to stay calm. I waited. Apparently, someone re-uploaded the stream, she said finally, looking past me rather than at me. Not on our channel. Not even under our names. But someone found it. Shared it. She gave a thin, forced laugh. Probably just a weird fan. We had a few people tag friends. That's probably it. I said, that's strange. Yeah, she said, then paused. One of them said it had your name in the file metadata or something. Like it was tagged from your device. I looked at her, careful. I didn't record anything. I wasn't even here. She blinked. No, I know. It's probably a mistake. But she didn't walk away. She stood there a little too long, then turned toward the guest room and shut the door behind her. A minute later, I heard the Bluetooth speaker power on, then off, then on again. Something about the sequence made her nervous, because I could hear her moving things around after that. Light thuds, drawers opening, fabric being folded. She didn't come out for a while. That night, she asked if our Wi-Fi had been glitchy lately. I told her no, but I could reset the router if she wanted. She said it was fine. Later, I saw her on the guest network instead of the main one, and she'd changed the name from Melissa's Devices to just Private. When she passed me in the hallway, she was carrying her salt lamp, unplugged. I asked if something was wrong with it, and she said she just felt like the light was too sharp tonight. Before she went to bed, she stopped at the thermostat and bumped it down 2 degrees. Helps with sleep, she said, even though she used to complain about how cold the floors got. I nodded and watched her walk down the hall, open the guest room door, pause just a second longer than usual, then step inside. The next morning, I woke up to a faint sound at 3:18 a.m. I sat up, walked into the hallway. The guest room door was shut, but the Bluetooth speaker was on. It was playing something, quiet, tinny, almost muffled, just for a few seconds. Then silence. The blue light blinked twice, and the speaker turned off. I waited outside the door for a few more seconds. No movement, no voice, just stillness. The next day, she didn't mention it, but she double-checked the door lock before heading out for groceries, and when she came back, she opened every window in the house. She was still trying to breathe, but I could tell something had shifted. She'd stopped asking what I was working on. She no longer offered me advice. She didn't talk about the retreat, and when she passed by me in the hallway that night, she didn't meet my eyes. Later, after she went to bed, I checked the file log. Someone had tried to log into the wrong streaming backend. Just once. At 3:20 a.m. The first sign that things weren't just unraveling, but snapping, came the morning after her second stream. One that didn't go quite as planned. She was doing her makeup at the dining table, balancing a compact mirror in one hand and dabbing under her eyes with the other, when her phone lit up with a notification. She glanced at it, froze for a beat too long, then tapped to open something. Whatever she saw made her stop mid-stroke. She didn't finish the eyeliner. She just stared. I stayed on the other side of the kitchen, pretending to scroll my own phone, but I could hear her breathing change, the way it does when you've just realized something's wrong and don't want anyone to know you're rattled. Then she asked, not looking at me, have you noticed anything weird with the Wi-Fi? I shook my head and said no. She nodded to herself. It's probably nothing. She went into the guest room and shut the door harder than she meant to. A few minutes later, I heard the Bluetooth speaker turn on, then off, then on again. I kept chopping vegetables. She didn't come out for almost an hour. When she did, she had her laptop clutched to her chest and a look on her face that wasn't fear exactly, but close. That afternoon, Arya came over again. Only this time it wasn't all incense and giggling. They sat on the back patio like before, but the vibe was different. Lower voices, shorter sentences. Through the screen door, I caught a few sharp words. Leaked, downloaded, circulating, Discord, screenshots. Arya's voice rose briefly. They said it looked like you were doing roleplay. Like fake healing or something. People are asking if it's even real. Melissa muttered something I couldn't hear. Then Arya replied, well, if you didn't post it, someone did. It came from somewhere. Melissa didn't say much the rest of the day. She stayed off Instagram, didn't light her Sage bundle, didn't play her usual ambient playlist. Around 7 p.m., her phone lit up again on the counter, and this time I saw the notification before she could pick it up. It was a direct message from someone named at Hollerud89. The preview read, "You looked so sure of yourself until you blinked." She grabbed the phone like she was hiding something. The moment passed quickly, but it landed. Later that night, I heard her pacing in the guest room. Not slow and meditative, but tight steps. Back and forth. Her voice came through the wall, low, urgent, clearly talking to Blake. "I told you I didn't share it. You said the files were encrypted." "No, I didn't save anything to the cloud. I didn't give anyone the login." A long silence. Then, more brittle. "Well, it wasn't him. He's not even. He doesn't care anymore." The next morning, she looked like hell. Her eyes were puffy, mascara from the day before barely rubbed off. She didn't even pretend to say good morning. Just made coffee in silence and stared at her phone like she expected it to spit venom. Then Blake dropped his video. It was short, just under 2 minutes. Tightly framed, softly lit, clearly rehearsed. He spoke slowly, with just enough self-seriousness to make sure his audience thought he was wounded, not culpable. "There's been a rupture," he said. "When sacred space is violated, we have to pull back, recalibrate, and choose integrity over exposure." Then he paused and added, "Out of respect for truth, I'm stepping away from some current collaborations until I can realign." He didn't say her name. He didn't need to. His followers got the message. Within the hour, her last reel had over 70 new comments, none of them kind. "Fake goddess energy. This is what healing looks like to you. You people are predators with yoga mats." She said she was safe? With him. Gross. Melissa didn't post anything that day. Didn't delete anything yet either. She just watched it all pile up. By nightfall, the cracks weren't just showing, they were swallowing her whole. She didn't eat. She didn't clean. She didn't meditate. She sat in the dark living room with her laptop open and the screen brightness down. She scrolled for hours, doing nothing with the information. Around 11 p.m., she finally spoke. "I don't deserve this. I was just trying to help people." She wasn't talking to me. Not really. They twisted everything I said. Why would they do that to me? There it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. Not remorse. Not understanding. Just delusion clinging to its last foothold. At 2:26 a.m., I turned on the Bluetooth speaker from my room. It lit up in the dark with that faint blue pulse. She didn't hear it at first. I waited. At 2:41 a.m., the preloaded clip played. "You've always been brave enough to step away from things that no longer served you, even if they thought you'd come back." Not loud. Just enough. There was a gasp. Then a sharp noise, maybe a cup being knocked over. Then footsteps. The speaker cut off. The next morning, when I passed the guest room on the way to make coffee, she was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with her back to the door. Her salt lamp was unplugged. Her eyes were red. No makeup. No mantra playing. She didn't even look up when I walked by. She started deleting later that day. First her stories, then the stream links, then her bio. She took down the email sign-up form, archived the retreat page. But she didn't do it all at once. She hovered over things, staring at them before finally hitting remove. When I passed behind her laptop screen, I saw her mouse linger over a folder labeled Ascension Sessions. She didn't delete it. She just renamed it. Archive. She packed a suitcase that night. Not the full retreat setup, just clothes, toiletries, her laptop, and the Bluetooth speaker. She moved quietly, with none of the grace she used to pretend she had. She told me she was going to stay with a friend for a while. "I need time to get my footing." I nodded. She looked around the guest room one last time, like she expected it to look different. Like she could sense something in the air but couldn't place it. Before she left, she stopped by the kitchen where I was wiping down the counter. "You've been kind through all this," she said. "More than I deserved." I said nothing. She smiled weakly. "Maybe one day I'll get to explain what really happened." I just said, "Drive safe." When she was gone, I walked back into the guest room. It looked empty now, but the camera was still in place. The files were still backed up, and the delivery was still scheduled, Friday, 10:01 a.m. Pacific. The board would be in session. The inboxes would be full, and the truth would be wearing a smile. Friday morning, I didn't rush anything. I made coffee like always. Toasted 2 slices of bread, ate standing up at the counter, same way I had every morning since she left. The house was still. Not peaceful, just cleared. Like the stage after a show that no one applauded. At 9:58 a.m., I opened my laptop and watched the email queue count down. 10 recipients. Not the public. Not social media. Just the core. Her sponsors. Her network. The yoga studio that had promised her a teaching residency in Oregon. The podcast host who called her a rising force in relational healing. The influencer who had reposted her crying selfie with the caption, "Truth in motion." They'd amplified her, endorsed her, sold her to their followers like she was a lifestyle upgrade. I didn't write anything dramatic. The message said, "For review, full session footage, unlisted link. Timestamp notes attached." The file wasn't edited for drama. No music, no zooms, no narrative cuts. Just her and Blake, full length, uninterrupted. I wanted them to hear her say it herself. At the 14:21 mark, she laughed and said, "People don't want actual healing. They want to watch someone pretend to grieve so they feel like they're doing the work, too." At 27:06, Blake said, "This isn't therapy. This is performance. With better lighting." And she nodded. At 42:52, she looked right into the camera and said, "They'll believe anything if you make it sound sacred." None of it was illegal. None of it violent. But it was disqualifying. I hit send at 10:01 a.m. exactly. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the living room. I didn't need to refresh anything. I didn't need to wait. The footage would speak without me. By noon, the San Diego studio pulled her profile from their website. By 2, her episode was quietly removed from the podcast's archive. By 5, her retreat mailing list link returned a 404 error. In less than 8 hours, everything she had built crumbled into disclaimers and silence. She didn't lose followers. She lost believers. And that was her currency. But the part I'll remember, the real moment I knew it landed, came at 7:17 p.m. She posted a story on her account. Black screen, no music, just a line of white text that said, "Be careful who you trust with your silence." A few minutes later, it disappeared. Then came the second post. Just a voice message, set to autoplay over another black screen. "I don't know what's real anymore," she whispered. "Every time I close my eyes, I hear myself talking back to me." It only stayed up for 10 minutes. But I saved it. The next morning, I walked to the mailbox just as she drove by. Her car slowed when she saw me standing there. We locked eyes. She didn't wave. I didn't smile. She just stared for a second, long enough for something to register, and then kept driving. That was the last time I saw her. But I could tell. She knew. Maybe not how. Maybe not when. But she knew. The matchbox she left behind was still on the guest room shelf. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand once, then tossed it in the trash. That room had done its job. The camera was already unplugged. Files backed up, deleted, done. All except one. The original session folder, untouched, sealed, private, was left on a single USB drive. I slid it into the bottom drawer of my desk, closed it, and locked the handle. Not because I needed leverage, but because sometimes proof isn't for power. It's just for peace. I didn't need to hear from her. I didn't need an apology. But 2 days later, she replied to an old thread, an email she and I had shared about scheduling back when we were still pretending to work on things. Her reply was short. "You win." I never wrote back. The following week, I packed up the house. I didn't sell it. Just left it. Moved 2 cities over. Smaller place. Quiet. When the movers came, I told them not to bother with the guest room. There was nothing worth taking. On my last walk through, I paused at the door. Stepped inside one more time. The floor was clean. The shelf was empty. The room no longer buzzed. I walked over to where the camera had been, placed something on the sill. It was a yellow Post-it. I'd written one line. "You were always on the record." Then I turned off the light, closed the door, and walked away.